All right, we are live. Steven Webster, welcome back to the future of fitness. It's been a little bit. Good to see you.
Back to the Future. I like it.
I wonder how many people outside of our age bracket actually recognize that movie. I mean, it's kind of spans different generations now, right? It's like hopefully.
I tried to have my 10-year-old son sit down and watch it with me. And he's like, no, it's one of those old movies. I was so solid.
Yeah, we definitely age ourselves, but it is all puns aside and jokes aside. It's great to have you back. You know, you and I were just joking. It's been 4.5 years since
It's
I've had
crazy.
you on the future of fitness, and that once again I feel starts to date myself about how long I've been doing this podcast thing, which is about 7 years. And I think recently, as of this year, I got to see your keynote at the Connected Health and Fitness Summit back in April, right, in Los Angeles, and it was captivating, man. You made some really strong cases about, I'll let you talk about it, but crossing the chasm and what that means for different brands, and the digital evolution of not just fitness and wellness technologies and brands and experiences, but also looking at history and looking at other industries and what we can look to emulate as we move forward. So super interesting. I know we're going to talk a core about that, but it has been 4.5 years. Stephen, maybe give us a
Yeah.
little bit of update, like what's going on with Asensei, and what's new with you.
Yeah. I mean, let's talk about the keynote first, because that was a good framing. Because, Asensei is almost 10 years old. So we kind of met at the halfway mark. That's when you first interviewed. We're almost up. I've been in the kind of the digital health and digital fitness industry for 10 years, but I've been in the technology industry my entire career. And, I think one of the things I really tried to frame, I was asked a keynote around what does the future look like? And, I'm a big believer in the future looks like the past, history rhymes. And so, you and I have spoken about this quite a bit before offline, but I've always thought that e-commerce is a great yardstick, if you like, for what the digital transformation of newer categories looks like. Because here we are, e-commerce is 30 years old. It's hard to think that when it still seems so new. And so really, how I encourage people to think about any category that's transforming is the diffusion of innovation. Not everybody has everything new all at once. It's not like we suddenly all own a Tesla. There's the early adopters that like the ideas of EVs, and they don't care about the fact that there's not much of a charging network yet. They'll put up with that pain to be first. And then you fast forward, 30 years. And can you believe we used to drive gas cars? Like, how crazy was that? And so it takes a long time for a technology to diffuse from what I call the pioneers and the innovators and the early adopters into the mass market. So even the laggards, even the people that said it was never going to be true, are quite delighted with the product they had 30 years ago they never believed should exist in the first place. And that's how I think about the digital transformation of health and fitness. The pioneers like Peloton and Hydro and Tonal, who people looked at their products like, who's going to want that? And it was the Kickstarter campaign funders like you and I that would go and buy these products. We're now crossing the chasm, and crossing the chasm is like, are we going to make it to the mass market or not? I use often the analogies of companies like Blockbuster and BlackBerry and Kodak that fall backwards into the chasm because they hold on too tightly to the belief that the future will look just like the past. And then some pioneers make it over the chasm, and some spectacularly run out of money and fall down the bottom, making a lot of noise. But the mass market shows up, and then the general consumer and the general population are much more accepting of, I would like a piece of fitness equipment at home, or I've always thought about strength training. And using e-commerce as an example, if you were to ask people 30 years ago who would be the top online fashion retailers, and you told them it was going to be Macy's and Kohl's in the US, they would never have believed you. They would have thought it was like some company that most of us have never heard of anymore, who rose meteorically like a shooting star and fizzled out into the night. So, I'm very excited about the health and fitness category. We're a big part of it now. We're part of the fabric of it, and it'll look a lot like the past.
Yeah, what I took away from it was this, and it is my firm belief, is, we saw such an unusual time during the pandemic of just this acceleration of adoption, right, for digital fitness, just more out of necessity. And then, all the conversations that happened over that 3 years, right? Gyms are dead, right? Like, da da da, da, da. We don't have to talk about that. It was just all that. But if we've been around for a little bit, we start to see cycles. And I've been 17 years in this industry now. So now I'm finally starting to see some real cycles come through. but it's always the long ball, right? It's like technology is going to transform just about everything we do, and fitness and wellness is no different. It's just a matter if you look at it at a linear versus just the spike that we had. The adoption is going to continue, and the technology is going to continue to evolve. So I thought that was kind of a really good framework that you put on that. And from my memory, you kind of put companies into three different categories, right? It was pioneers, digital natives, and legacy brands. So maybe expand on those and give us some examples of what those were.
Yeah, and the reason I like to categorize them is you need to know who you are to understand the competitive opportunities and threats for you in the landscape as transformation is happening. And then for other companies like Asensei, you need to know who you're selling to understand their pains and how you can address them. So I start with the pioneers. The pioneers are the Pelotons, the Tonals, the Hydros, arguably the Nikes and the Nike Pluses and the Under Armours. But they kind of named and framed the category. They're the first ones to speak about, like, we're connected fitness and we're here and we're new and we're here to stay and we're going to disrupt. But listen, the pioneers are in a predicament. They've raised a lot of money at high valuations. There's rush to be profitable. They built a lot of things that other people can buy now. So now they're on legacy technology. That advantage becomes a disadvantage. And, Peloton's a good metaphor because everybody else is now drafting behind you, kind of ready to make their attack at any moment. And so it's tough being a pioneer. You have an opportunity to become the category king, but if you don't seize that opportunity, you kind of start to face the threat of new entrants, and you need to start thinking about what's core to what we do and what's the stuff that we should accept that sunk cost fallacy of, like, we maybe spent millions and millions of dollars building something, but we could buy it for thousands of dollars a month and it would be better and it would take a lot of our pain away. So that's the pioneers. The next tranche, if you like, is what I call the digital natives. So digital natives have a slide in their VC deck that says we're the Peloton of X, right? They showed up after the category existed. Companies like Peloton and Tonal and Hydro had illustrated to them what the future would look like, what works, what doesn't work. That might even be business models. Like, why is everybody a $40 a month subscription? Because Peloton price tested that until that's where the price landed, and everybody else is like, it's $40 a month. And so for digital natives, they're typically venture-backed companies. So runway is the challenge. It's like you got 12 to 18 months to get to some major milestone so you can raise more money or be profitable. So they can't afford to do what the Pelotons did. They can, if you're a digital native and you're spending your VC money building something you could buy, you're dramatically altering your likelihood of success. So digital natives have to think about picking good partners and going to market with, not going to market despite, I guess. But this, I love the legacy brands. Although one of our customers, PowerBlock, and you've met Matson, I think, from PowerBlock, keeps asking me, like, stop calling us legacy. You make us sound old. I'm like, dude, you've been selling dumbbells for 30 years. You are old. But, Matson was like, I like to think of us as a legendary brand. And I love that because I think legacy brands who manage to ride the wave of a digital transformation become legendary brands. The ones that don't fall into the chasm, like Kodak or, Blockbuster or BlackBerry, digital transformations make them legendary because they're relevant again. And so that's typically the great thing about like legacy brands is they have a P&L and they're profitable and they have like massive customer bases and loyal fans, and they just have to think about how they embrace digital. And so if you're a legendary brand, maybe M&A is a good strategy. How does an equipment manufacturer acquire a digital company? Like one of our customers is Center. That's a great example. Most folks in this industry probably know that Hypo's Capital came along and took Inspire Fitness, who were like making, really great fitness equipment, and Center, who had a really great digital app, celebrity endorsed, and they put the two of them together under the Center brand. So that's, I think, a great example of, legendary brands thinking about how they're going to move into the digital future. Most importantly, though, Eric, are the pick and shovel companies, and that's us. And what happens is you cross the chasm, both the digital natives and the legendary brands, they start thinking, we want to go prospecting for gold, but let's buy our picks and shovels and let's buy our denim jeans and let's not be worrying about, the stuff that everybody else has already solved. And so when I think about pick and shovel brands, and that's not a phrase I coined, it's a phrase the VC industry coined, but it's the something as a service. So, our friends in the industry like Feed FM, we provide music as a service. Mux provide video as a service. Rook provide wearable data integration as a service, and Asensei provides movement recognition as a service. And so we've kind of shown up to say, whether you're a legendary legacy brand, whether you're a digital native, or whether you're a pioneer that realizes you're sitting on legacy technology that's no longer a competitive advantage, but is slowing your progress down, get to the future faster with picks and shovels. So that's kind of how I frame the category. That's how I think about our sales forecast and our pipeline and our portfolio of customers. And that's how I encourage our customers to think about themselves as they think about their digital strategies.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Kind of a fun question I have for you, Steven. If you had to pick one, if you were going to be a pioneer, digital native, or a legendary brand, what would you be?
I'm a pioneer. I'm a digital native trapped in a pioneer's body, I think. I can't. I don't want to be legacy. I guess I want to be legendary. But listen, my DNA has always been innovation. I'm always fascinated by that intersection of what's possible and what's probable. And so my entire career has been about believing something that no one else believes with conviction and trying to bring it to market. I mean, I've been telling everybody that AI movement recognition would exist for 10 years now. And maybe only in the last 12 to 18 months, do more people agree with me than disagree with me, right? So I'm sort of a pioneer in that regard. I wish I wasn't. It's a lonely journey for 8 of the 10 years. But what I like about digital natives is fundamentally I like building things and I like bringing products to market and I like being close to the customer. So the great thing about what I do at Asensei is I get to live vicariously through my customers. And so, working with brands like Alter and Bout as digital natives as an example, I'm excited about their products and I'm excited about how excited their customers are about their products. And we just have the privilege of being a small part of that.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Well, I think this is a really good kind of framework for how to talk about what you do is, tell it in the lens of a client, right? And, if we want to break it down into different categories, but like Alter, you mentioned them, right? They're into, you can explain better what they do. I've looked at them, I researched them. I've never experienced Alter. I'm sure you have. So give us an idea, like how would you categorize a company like Alter? How do you guys work with them? How do you enhance the experience?
Yeah, so Alter, go check them out, alterme.com. Great team. Let me talk about their team first because I love teams. And so, I think there's 2 sides to that team. The founders, Scott and Blake, Scott Cohen, this is their 4th, 5th, 6th company, hugely successful entrepreneurs. Their last company was, I believe, a competitor to Invisalign, kind of in the dental brace market. They sold that company for $1 billion, no VC. I mean, they're product guys. They really understand how do you look at a market where there's innovation, but the consumer's still got unmet needs or they're underserved, and how do you innovate on the product with a profitable product? And Scott saw connected fitness as a great example of one of those markets. So the product is a screen. It's a reflective screen. It's a mirror that hangs on the wall. But a big belief Alter have is hyper personalization. Like, how can you hyper personalize the consumer's experience so that your workout and my workout are very different workouts? The other thing Scott and Blake do is they're not the smartest guys in the room. They're very smart at what they do, but they bring in experts in the categories that they choose to disrupt. And so they hired tremendous folks. There's good like Nike and Under Armour DNA in that team on the sports science and the marketing side. So I look at Alter as like, it's the product Nike should have built. And the connected fitness mirror, when you onboard, you're given a DNA swab, and that DNA is used to kind of personalize a lot of the detail of what your programming and workouts will be. You wear a strap that's monitoring your heart rate variability, making daily decisions on, is today a workout or a work-in? Like, should we be going hard or should we be kind of more inward focused? And as well as using biometrics for hyper-personalization, they're using biomechanics. And that's where Asensei comes in. The camera on the mirror is watching every exercise you do and doing the basics, the price of admission stuff of like, I'm not going to make you write down how many reps you did or what weight you used. Like, I'll do that for you. I'm watching you. I should be doing that for you. But more importantly, when you start observing someone's technique and their form, they can make good decisions about adjustments to your programming. Now, those adjustments could be rep-based and load-based, or those adjustments could be technique-based. It's like Eric is nailing his forward lunges, so it's time for a forward lunge with rotation, or it's time for forward lunge with rotation while holding load. And so now They can deliver those kind of experiences. And I think the last thing I love about Alter, which is Alter, I love many things about you, but another thing I love about Alter is they've really thought about how to blend the hybrid experience. So it's not just hyper personalization, but it's hybrid. So you have access to coaching staff. So there's a human looking at your data, and you can kind of have those like one-to-one coaching calls. So they're really thinking about what that hybrid experience is. Now, interestingly, it's not necessarily hybrid at home and in gym. We just had an earthquake. Pretty
No
confident we
way.
just had an earthquake. Anyway, we're all good.
Oh man, I don't miss California.
Yeah, I know. It's real. If it's not fires, it's earthquakes. So, hyper personalization, but also that kind of hybrid of, human in the loop and AI in the loop. So, yeah, really exciting customer. Go and check them out. Go and buy their product. And it's one you get to experience Asensei with.
See, that's something I didn't really think about, like the progression, regression in movements, right? Movement selection, repetition, like that makes a lot of sense. That's really valuable. I mean, that's something that generally only a coach can do.
It's interesting. You know this about me. My background in coaching is martial arts, and like in martial arts, I started in judo, then jiu-jitsu, then karate. I've always had a belt system. I've always had white belt to black belt, and as a martial artist, as an athlete, that was my motivation. Like I wanted to train for my next belt. I wanted to get my next belt. I would be nervous and excited about my grading. The grading was a day where you went and got, ice cream afterwards. It was a big event in the family. And so you were kind of taught that importance of progression, and there was progression within a belt. Like you're training to get better at the things you need to do for the criteria for that belt. But then there's always, and you can look down the line to your right and you can see the people a belt higher than you, and the people on your left were looking at you. So you had a sense of where you are and also where you could be. And one of the interesting things for me when I started Asensei is that was already baked into the underlying architecture of how our product was going to work. Like one of my two co-founders, he's also a martial artist. He's a 6th-degree black belt in karate. And so as he and I had, before we kind of really started reaching out to customers, and we were more in that, like, is this even possible? Can we teach a machine to understand movement and coach sport? We had this notion of coaching pedagogy and teaching syllabus, and that like, there was no point starting this company unless we could progress you through a syllabus and make you better at the thing. So when I then started the company and I spent far too much time on the mat doing martial arts. I was like, I need to throw myself into activities where I'm a white belt again, where I'm a beginner again. So I started showing up at yoga classes and Pilates reformer classes, and got demolished in the TRX headquarters in San Francisco. And I was just, taking all these different classes. And I realized that actually TRX would be an exception because they have an excellent educational kind of philosophy. But most other practices is like, there's no white belt to black belt. There's no common understanding of when you progress someone, when you regress someone. So yeah, that's a core part of our technology. And I really love the Alter's team because of the DNA of no pun intended, but because of the DNA of the performance science and the coaching team at Alter. They understand that tracking reps and tracking load and tracking when fatigue happens and tracking quality of movement is important. That flow, a state that we're all watching the Olympics right now and we see athletes in flow, but we can all experience micro moments of flow in any activity where it just, it clicks, it feels good, or I lost myself in that. But flow is the equilibrium of challenge and skill. So if you're over challenging someone or you're under challenging someone, they're either frustrated or bored. And so if you come and ask me, well, how can I use AI to drive engagement? Find flow, find that equilibrium of challenge and skill, and show people progression, because progression is retention. So I think Alter are nailing that, and it's a price of admission experience that, we're certainly seeing, and you'll start to see other customers doing it.
One of the, because I came from it too, CrossFit just seems so prime for some sort of belt system, right? And I know there's a lot of companies out there that develop the framework, which is just very complicated. I'm like, it's got to be simpler, right?
Yeah.
It's just got to be a little bit simpler, right? But yeah, that would just seem so perfect because people love to progress, through that. And it really is. It's very similar to martial arts. I mean, even the little bit I've dabbled in. But yeah, I was somebody do it right. If they're listening out there.
Yoga should have a belt system. I think it's and
yeah.
just not to go too off topic, but the belt system was first introduced in judo, and Jigoro Kano, the founder of judo, worked for the Department of Education or the Ministry of Education in Japan. So it took a teacher to introduce something to a discipline to teach kids for physical fitness. So it's very much a teaching philosophy and a coaching philosophy and an engagement philosophy that if you read all the latest literature on gamification, I mean, it ladders up to so many of the things that we've learned since. There's a psychology and a science behind.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Steven, you talked about Power Block, and they've been around forever. I have a set in my garage.
Yeah, me too.
It's great equipment, right? It's great stuff. And how do you take something like that, right? This would be the legacy, or they don't like that. They like a legendary brand, right? We'll give them that. What do you do for something like that? I mean, there's dumbbells all over the place. Are they building it into the actual dumbbell now, or like, yeah, how are you moving? How are you doing movement recognition, coaching intelligence in a dumbbell and a piece of?
Well, the great thing about someone like a Power Block is it's a very analog product, right? It's, we could name 100 products like a Power Block. I don't mean as good an interchangeable dumbbell, but there's so many fitness products that we all use that are polyurethane and steel, or they're, parachute webbing straps, or, they're analog. They don't need to have sensors in them or batteries in them or Bluetooth connections in them. So we realized, obviously, with Asensei, we're using the camera on a smartphone or a TV or a set-top box or a connected fitness mirror. We can observe what the person is doing. We call that pose estimation. So we can observe your posture over time and your movement. And that allows us to recognize that you're doing a squat or a squat to press or a dumbbell curl or an alternating forward lunge or whatever exercise you're doing. We can see that you're doing it, how well you're doing it, whether we should coach you in real time, whether the next time we see you doing it, we should give you a couple of tips. It's like, hey, Eric, alternating lunges, but remember, I want you pressing off your front leg, not pulling back from your back leg, or whatever we saw the last time will kind of be your intention for the next time. So we've nailed coaching the person. But the next thing we realized is, now that the camera is pointing at the scene, what else can we use AI to infer about the scene? And so we built into our computer vision pipeline, we built this ability to train the machine to recognize specific objects. Now, that's not particularly novel to Asensei. There's novelty in how we do it and how we do it accurately, which I won't get into. But, we've all seen hot dog, not hot dog, right? If you watched Silicon Valley. Or, Google training recognition of cats versus dogs. So we're now able to take a SKU like a Power Block Pro 50 and say, let's teach the machine to recognize a Power Pro 50, a Power Block Pro 50 when it's in view of the camera. Then with Asensei, let's fuse that. Fusion is when you combine two different AI models. Let's have fusion with pose estimation. So I see Eric and I see a Power Block Pro 50, and now I see that Eric is holding that Power Block Pro 50 in his hand. So we now recognize, it's an Apple Pencil. We now recognize that you're holding that Pro 50 and what you're doing with it. But then the final thing we learned that we were able to do is like fine tune the recognition of that model. So the way your interchangeable Pro 50 works is, you put it on the ground, you just change a little selector and it changes the weight that comes out the cradle. We can teach the machine to see what I can't even see. If I'm watching a video of you kind of just doing curls with a Pro 50, it's hard for me to tell whether that's 10 pounds, 15 pounds, 25 pounds. We've trained the machine to discern. So we've turned the smartphone into a scale. So now, however many Power Blocks, and it's up to Matson to tell you how many are sold and in market, but we've made them connected fitness products overnight at the same price, no addition to the bill of materials. You can now have that interchangeable dumbbell be part of a connected fitness experience. Now, Alter are not a Power Block customer, but you can imagine a future in when, if you're training in front of your connected fitness mirror with a Power Block, not only will we do the work of logging the reps that you're doing, we'll do the work of logging the load that you're using, and we'll also do the work of recognizing that with that load, you seem to start to fatigue 3 or 4 reps earlier. So now the things a coach would see, such as maybe that load's a little heavy because I want to see you go to failure between 8 and 10 reps, and you'll go to failure between 7 and 9, drop 5 pounds on the next set. Logging reps and logging loads is the foundation of programming. And so if we want to deliver at-home personalized coaching, as if we had a coach in the room, again, it's price of admission. And so I'm really excited for Power Block. We're working with a number of other customers where we're training recognition and understanding of their equipment and how you're using it. But that's like another stage in our computer vision pipeline that we've added as well.
Yeah, I listened to a podcast, Stephen, that you had with Paul Larson at a Revelstoke.
Yeah.
The Hit Science podcast. I really urge people. He's also one of the founders of Athletica.ai. So
And he knows his stuff.
he knows his shit. Yeah, for sure. And you guys had a really interesting conversation about why like rep counting and volume, like it's not just a nice feature, but it's really critical for coaching and coaching intelligence, therefore, right? So maybe, I mean, I'm probably bastardizing that conversation because you guys did it really elegantly, but give us like the summation of why that's so critical for the industry and for coaches.
Yeah, I mean, since time began. I mean, I remember a long time ago now, like the first book on karate I ever had, The Karate Do Manual by Vince Morris, who went on to be one of my coaches like 20 years later. But, you know, I had that manual, and in the back of that manual was Vince's weight routine. It was like the workout bench and I had a bench in my room as a kid, and I traced those pages out of the book and stuck them on my wall, and I tracked my reps, and I always wanted to do more and do more reps and do more weights. And, you know, I've got, I keep meaning to share it on LinkedIn, actually, Bruce Lee's workouts. They're like, all of his index cards are in a museum in Seattle somewhere of every rep and every set he ever did. It's the foundation of improvement, is measuring past performance to inform future programming. And I mean, they teach this in NASM or ACM or any other kind of sporting. It's like, what's your client's goals? Is it strength? Is it endurance? Is it power? Is it muscle building? And what's their one rep max? You know, what's the maximum load they could move and only move once? And in programming, even to this day, is derived from that. Where do you want to see failure? Between 8 to 12 reps at X% of your one rep max, if your goal is this. So that's how coaches have always programmed. So again, if I want to solve the problem of how can unsupervised practice be as effective, if not more effective than practice with a coach there, I need to know your reps. I need to know your loads. I need to observe fatigue, and that will allow us to adapt programming. So I don't live in a world where ChatGPT, just given the right prompt, is going to come up with the perfect programming for you. It's still a scientific method. It's not hallucination. It's information. And so, I'm really excited now that we can start to track the kind of detail that, whether there's a human in the loop or not, allows us to deliver effective programming. And the last thing I'll say is, when you look at a company, like take Tonal as an example, how many workouts have Tonal tracked now? And they talk about this. They've got one of the largest data sets of instrumented exercise that's ever taken place. So now you can start to do interesting things like measure the efficacy of your programming. For someone of a particular archetype, is this kind of programming more effective than that programming? Well, let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the longitudinal data that we've collected over time. So, we actually filed patent on this stuff like 10 years ago, that the science of ad tech would become the science of fitness tech, and that we would be able to use large data sets and multivariate testing and segmentation of audiences to really dial in what the most effective programming for you versus me would be. So we're just day zero of hyper personalization.
Yeah, so cool. And if anyone knows me, I'm a huge fan of Tonal. I just used it 20 minutes before this interview. You know, I had 30 minutes. I went up there, and what I love about it is that. Yeah, oh yeah, thanks, man. I'm feeling a little swell. Like I don't have to, and this is someone I've worked with a lot of weights, right, over the years, a lot of barbells, a lot of dumbbells, a lot of machines, but I like Tonal because I don't have to think about it. I show up, I don't have to move the weights around. I don't have to do, like, it's very efficient, and it logs all my weights. It noticed that I was a little off balance. And now I think they have, as you would probably agree, they probably have a lot of work to do as far as their movement recognition and motion capture capabilities. Anyway, we don't have to comment on that, but it is for someone who's old school like I am. I love it. And I think programming, when I look at AI and technology, having programmed thousands of workouts, like so many over the times, and how quickly it gets thrown out the window due to things that technology could probably answer right now, like time off, right? Being sick, vacations, like all of these things, like just fatigue over time, like all these things that can now be sourced through input data. It's like you were talking about, and the AI to process it correctly. It's trained correctly with the right data. That's super exciting. I think that's like the lowest hanging fruit in our industry, to be quite honest with you. So
Right.
curious to get your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer when it comes to programming. And listen, I've coached thousands of athletes from white belt to black belt. I didn't coach thousands to black belt, but probably close to 100. White belt to brown belt, the teaching syllabus rarely changed. You know, as I became a better coach, I probably made a few kind of radical shifts every so often, but every 4 years or every 5 years, I'll be like, I'm going to change the way I teach or the order I teach things in. Fundamentally, the syllabus never changed. And if you trained with me for long enough, and lots of my students trained with me for 7 or 8 years because they would do undergrad and PhD, they've seen the classes 100 times before. There were certain classes, it's just like, I've done this class before. We're learning how to do a hip throw for the first time. And I know how he teaches hip throw. And I know the progression he's going to go through for the next 2 hours to teach it. So the programming didn't necessarily change, but what was different every time and why people would still come back to the class 8 years later was the consumption of the programming was different every time, the personalization of it, because the last time they did the class, they were a yellow belt and making this mistake. And so I walked past, it's like, hey, turn your foot a little bit more to open your hip. There you go. That's much easier, isn't it? Next time I taught them the class, they're a brown belt or they're a black belt. I'm like, bend your knees a little deeper so your center of gravity drops below theirs and you'll lift them a lot easier and really yank with that arm. So same class, same programming, same exercise, but I was tailoring the cream on top, right? The and finally. And that's what Asensei offers, right? That's one of the things we offer is we don't need AI dynamically changing the programming every single time, but you and I should be able to do the same workout and have a different experience of the workout matched again to our challenge and our skill. And so that's kind of how I think about a lot of this stuff is, listen, Eric, it's as fundamental as this. Every day, myself, my CTO, Bill, you've met Blake, our VP of Sales and Partnerships, like we've all coached. And every single day between us, we'll have 5 or 6 conversations about, well, how did I coach? Our eyes gaze up to the right as we try and remember 10 years ago, some Fusty Hall in Scotland, some church hall teaching karate. And it's like, well, how did I coach? Like I would do this and I would do that, or I would use this drill, or I would break movements down this way. And every line of code in our SDK is an expression of how as coaches we coached. Like we're not trying to push technology on people. We're trying to scale coaching digitally. And coaching might be as simple as like, make a really boring class where I need you doing 1,000 reverse punches in the next 2 hours just to get the motor memory in there. I can still make it fun. I don't have to just make you stand there and do 1,000. I can mix up the programming and give you challenges and first to 10 or teams. Like I can do just by counting your reps. I can like really imagine like fun games and gamified ways of teaching you, like getting the reps in. Or I can go to the other extreme and be like, I'm going to give you like really, really nuanced coaching on angle, direction, and timing. So you land that punch a split second before your opponent in a competitive match. Same exercise, different coaching strategies. And that's a big thing of Asensei is what's your coaching strategy? Sorry, I could go on for hours about this.
No, it's fun to talk about, man. And you're a great storyteller. One of the things that I think from my memory from 4 years ago when we did a podcast is you really painted a picture of like the in-person experience and how this technology can change that. I mean, in the digital world, right? There's going to be increasing opportunities for this technology to evolve the experience. But what about in brick and mortar when you're training in real life? What are the opportunities there? What do you see?
Well, again, I go back to my fundamental framework of history rhymes, right? And, everyone loves to be in a tribe, looking at another tribe, telling the other tribe why they're right, they're wrong, and we're going to win and you're going to lose. And, in my past, I've been there with Flash versus HTML or on-premise versus cloud and like all these asinine arguments you end up in as an industry. And, and we had one, right? It was like at home versus in person, like it's a zero-sum game and somebody has to win and somebody has to lose. And history leaves clues. The future is going to be omni-channel. The pendulum will swing one way and it'll swing the other way, and eventually it'll settle somewhere in the middle. And every consumer is not going to behave exactly the same. So some consumers might prefer to spend more time in person because they're single and they like the community, or because they drive home from a commute and the gym's a place that they like to go to break their work day from their time at home. And. We've all got a million reasons why we may or may not like to go to the gym. And for others, it's at home. And they provide the convenience or the time or the equipment or the experience, or they're embarrassed and they don't like to be at a gym, but they feel comfortable doing yoga at home. So it's always going to be an omni-channel experience. But here's what happens, and I'll use a different analogy. Remember when we talked about bring your own device? Like, how long ago was that? Was that like a year ago or 10 years ago? But, you know, you get your job. I got my job at Adobe. I think it was probably the first job I was given a mobile phone. It's like, here's your BlackBerry. I'm like, oh, BlackBerry, and it has email and it has keys. Wow. And like, I don't have to pay for it. And like, that didn't last, because about 2 years later, I had an iPhone, and I had two phones. I had my BlackBerry for work and my iPhone. And then I kind of wander into the IT department at Adobe and be like, hey, do you know how to get my iPhone on the email system so I can just do my email here? And then what happened? The experience of the consumer product was so much better than the experience of the enterprise product, that the consumer spoke and said, I want to have this device here. That is going to happen and is happening in health and fitness. If you've got Tonal on your wall at home, and you're going to a gym and that's been replaced with some janky 30-year-old, great grandfather of Tonal, you're going to grudge that gym membership. And also you're going to be like, and with my Tonal, like, I didn't have to think about what exercises to do. And it gave me my program and it logged my work and it gave me a high five because I got a PB and it tracked my form and blah, blah, blah. So number one, gyms, fitness studios, they have to be thinking about the consumer's expectations have been elevated by digital at home, and they have an expectation of the same elevation of experience in person. Now, then you start thinking about, but what's the advantage of being in person? Well, I have community. There's other people there. There are coaches on the floor. There is equipment that I don't own. So if you can add digital to that, you can elevate the experience again. So it becomes this kind of arms race of experience. And so fast forward to today, we're working with gyms, we're working with boutique fitness studios, we're working with franchisees where they're recognizing that we can drive member acquisition. In Motion Wellness is one of our customers, where you warm up with a practitioner, you're going for assisted stretching. You warm up with a practitioner, quietly Asensei is watching you warm up and giving the practitioner some insight and some feedback on your movement quality and some recommendations and insights. So you're getting this personalized precision wellness and healthcare powered by Asensei, but it's delivered by the practitioner in the room. So think about what that does for acquisition and conversion of customers and engagement, because you can see you're getting better from assessment to assessment. We have gyms and boutique fitness studios also thinking about, we talk about crawl, walk, run. Run is just cameras in the ceiling of the gym tracking everybody doing everything. But crawl is station-based experiences where you at least warm up at the gym, or perhaps, where the kettlebells are, there's like some connected experience. And then we've got customers like Bouts. You probably know Bout, and they've done a fantastic job, making people aware of their product, the boxing bag with the brain. So they have a camera, and a Asensei, they have sensors in the bag that allows them to track where the bag's hit and how hard the bag is hit. But you fuse that with, it was a left cross, or it was an uppercut, or a roundhouse kick, or a knee. I'm getting into it just telling you about it. And now you can imagine a whole gamified experience of what techniques you threw. And so now that leaderboard on the wall, it isn't just your heart rate zone and what heart rate zone you were in, but you're competing against the people in the room. And I don't want to steal Mauro's thunder, because he's got so many plans for what happens when you gamify a connected boxing experience. He's just getting started. But I think that's a great example of, you can either go into a boxing club with a bunch of old Everlast bags kind of creaking and stinky gloves that everyone has put on. And these are the gyms that I used to love training in. Or you go to a bout studio and it's a communal connected fitness experience that perhaps even people at home are participating in at the same time as people in the studio. That's a great example of what the future of in-person fitness looks like when you bring digital and tech like Asensei to bear.
Yeah. I think about this often, like, if I was going to open another gym, what would I do? Now, obviously, where I live, that has to bear some sort of influence over it. But if I had, maybe a little bit more population, I think I would go with a very high tech, low footprint, high level of education. Like I only have a small amount of staff, but they're very well trained, right? Using things like Tonal as like the strength training. It's very personalized, having, warm up and mobility rooms, stretching modalities, nice amenities, right? Some contrast therapy, things like that. Just the basics, fundamental things that I know are super healthy for people,
Yeah.
right? But keeping it clean and neat and leveraging technology in a really major way and having it all personalized, like kind of like what eGym does, right? Too is like,
Right.
They're building on this ecosystem of all the different types of equipment.
Right.
And I think that's kind of the direction it's going. It's still kind of, it's in bits and pieces yet. It hasn't really all come together. So, when you look at like the optimal fitness experience, because I'm sure you think about this at like 2 a.m. in the morning, Steven, like, let's put 2030, right? It's a nice number. If you look at like the future of coaching intelligence 6 years from now, the optimal experience for the consumer, the fitness consumer, we're not going to talk about the other 80% right now because that's a whole nother conversation we don't have time for. But what does that look like in your mind? I'm sure you have a vision.
I hope it looks less like Blade Runner and more like it looked like 10 years ago. I love technology that fades to black, that you just don't know it's there, but it is there and it's elevating your experience. So, I don't want to walk into a gym or walk into a fitness studio and it's like super high tech, things kind of turning and scanning me and, that's almost dystopian. But I want the boxing bag. I want the tonal. I want that sort of interoperability. I want, listen, if I fast forward, I'm going to future cast for, always dangerous. So let's just have fun with it. But will we all be carrying smartphones around in our pockets in 10, 15, 20 years time? No. And the mobile operators know that already. They're already recognizing that it'll be something we wear on our face. It won't be something we keep in our pocket. That is our interaction with the world. So whether that's smart glasses or, I had the incredible experience some years ago of using Mojo Vision, a kind of smart contact lens with a screen on it. So, and I also believe in the world of just every surface. When I was at Microsoft, we had these incredible, we literally had a house in the middle of an office building in Redmond, but you'd like open this front door and suddenly you were in a house. And it had a living room and a kitchen and a dining room. And we called it the home of the future. Awesome branding. And we just had all this cool tech in there. And one of the things was light bulbs that had Microsoft Connect in them. So any light fixture could now be something that could project onto the surface and track your interaction with the surface. So I think about that a lot as well. Is like, we won't necessarily have, $1,000 fitness mirrors on every single wall, but we'll use the wall that we already have to become a surface for interaction. So I think interaction just disappears and becomes what we call invisible computing, but powered by AI. So yeah, I hope the gym of the future doesn't look too much different to the gym of today, but it's just imbued with technology that's wraps the experience around us.
Awesome. Last question for you, Steven, is people are listening to this within the industry. How can we help you? How can we help Asensei? What would you like to hear from people about?
Appreciate the question. Talk to us. Let's just keep it as simple as that. We're deeply passionate about technology. It's the DNA of the team, as we've all, especially in the leadership of the team, we've all been in the tech industry for 20, 30 years. I don't speak about this very often. It's always me being interviewed, but my CTO is the introvert. But he built a speech recognition company that he took public in London, and movement recognition is very analogous to speech recognition. My co-founder, Ross, he was a hardware engineer, chip designer. He's put like 80 plus chips into market with teams for, if you own an iPhone, an iPad, a Samsung Galaxy Gear, if you had a BlackBerry, you probably owned a project that Ross has a chip inside. So we've got deep tech DNA in the team. And so we think a lot about tech. We're super passionate about coaching. Like we've coached, competed, and coached our entire lives. And so we have a deep passion for how important it is to pass that on to as many people as possible and allow more people to be coached. And we've spent the last 10 years of our life in this industry thinking about movement recognition and AI. And so how can people help us? Like, let us buy you a coffee and let us listen and understand the challenges you're facing, and let us share a point of view on how we think we can help. And, the last thing I would say is, probably by the end of the year, we're going to be at a place where we have a customer a month. Like we have an enterprise customer a month coming on board with Asensei. And that virtuous cycle of actually having customers as opposed to just having a website is customers tell you exactly what they need. And there's lots more customers that look just like them, but they don't tell you what they need until you've developed that deep trust of delivering for them. Right. And so I don't underestimate the privileged position that we're in, that we now have an incredible portfolio of customers who are being very open and transparent and honest with us about the problems that they need to solve, and how some of them we can help them solve, and some of them we can introduce them to others who can help them solve. But we'd love to just share that, within reason and without breaching any confidentiality, share the general trends of how this industry gets better. Because I think at the end of the day, Eric, we're all motivated by exactly the same thing. We all want to get more people moving. We all want to help more people unlock their potential. And all of us, like you and I, that have been coaches, we realize like our little tiny dent in the universe is like, if we can coach people the physical skills that we have, if somebody coached us, we can give something to them that will hopefully have the same impact on their life that it had on ours. That's what a sensei is. That's what the word sensei means, is that duty to pass on those skills. So yeah, I just, how can you help? Let's buy you a coffee.
Yeah, love it. And I would encourage people too to follow you on LinkedIn. You put up a lot of really good content, really interesting perspectives. And I always enjoy our conversations whenever we meet, especially in real life. It's a good time, Steven. So if people want to get a hold of you besides LinkedIn, is there a way you'd like them to go?
I think you could guess my email address in a heartbeat. So go for it. And but yeah, LinkedIn is by far the best way of connecting with us. Find me and follow me.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the update here, Steven. It's always a fun conversation, and I promise it won't be 4.5 years until we do the next one.
Awesome. I look forward to it.
We'll do another one next year.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Steven Webster. Thank you, sir.